Yes, folks, hello, welcome once again to MoDXtra Games and Collectibles. It's time for another action figure review here on the channel. And as you can see on the screen in front of you today, this installment is going to be taking a closer look at the Hiya Toys Exquisite Minis G.I. Joe Cobra Trooper. So stick around, I'm going to give you all the ins and outs, ups and downs that you need to know about this figure so that if you've been thinking about picking one up for yourself, then you'll have a good thorough review to get some info to decide whether it's worth your hard-earned cash or not. I'm going to kick off by taking a look at the packaging and the peg presents for those who collect mint in box. Then going to move on to the figure itself and review the aesthetic and the visual experience with this fig. Then on to the articulation and posability, have a little walkthrough of all the accessories and added value, and pop him next to a couple of other figures from the line to do a comparison. And with all that said and done, you should have plenty of info to make your mind up whether you want to crack your wallet or purse open to pick this one up for yourself. So let's crack on and let's get into it, and let's travel back in time to visit past Chris on the day it arrived on my doorstep to crack it open. Oh, not quite. There's going to be a quick disclaimer first, but let's do it. How's it going, folks? Future Editing Chris here, just dropping in to throw that disclaimer in. So, on this channel, historically, traditionally, most, if not all, bar a very small selection of figures, has all been bought with my own money. But this one has not. Hiya Toys themselves has sent this out to me. This is review product that I have received for free. And while I love receiving free stuff, I love getting stuff, I want to make it very clear that that won't influence the review in any way. I will review it the same way I review a figure as if I bought it with my own money. And I also want to be very clear that Hiya Toys, in the provision of this review product, have made no quid pro quo requests, not tried to influence the outlook. In fact, they straight up said, be as honest as you like. It really is just getting word out about their figures. So, allow that to influence your view however you see fit. That's fine. But I just felt like I wanted to be straight up about that. All right. So there you go. Let's get into it. And now let's take a look at the packaging, shall we? All right, then, folks. Well, here is the Hiya Toys Cobra Trooper, the exquisite mini G.I. Joe Cobra Trooper in packaging. And as you can see, it's a pretty standard, blister on card back that we've seen with the other Hiya Toys figures there. Got the Cobra Trooper there, front and center with the goodies being shown off all around. Nice bit of artwork with that Hector Greedo inspired flame background, which is nice. I mean, it's just simple and straightforward, Then on the back, a couple of digital renders showing off the figure. Oh, not digital renders, they are the figure in fact itself, posed up, contact information, socials, what I assume is possibly legal bollocks and malarkey. That looks like it's in Mandarin. QR code to take you to somewhere that I've not checked out. This does say 2025 on it, but I feel like this is an older figure, but whatever. So yeah, there you go. Pretty decent. Obviously pretty eye-catching for the mint in box folks, I imagine, but I'm not a mint in box collector. I'm going to crack this bad boy open, get good and hands-on, have a good bit of man-child playtime, jot down some review thoughts and come back with those in just a second. So stick around because Future Chris is going to share those review thoughts in 3, 2, 1. All right then, folks, well, let's get into the aesthetic and visual experience with the figure, and here's a full head-to-toe look of the Cobra Trooper for you to have a little eyeball at. And, yeah, aesthetically, it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. I mean, your kind of old-school OG Cobra Trooper is kind of vestigially evident in this, but overall it's they've steamed ahead into their own space with this, and this is a total reinterpretation of their own making as far as I can tell. I'm not familiar with any vintage figures through the ages from Hasbro that have looked like this. Maybe there's been some comic book interpretations, perhaps Devil's Due or something, but I'm less familiar with that, so someone else will have to jump into the comments and kind of fill me in. Or one of the video games. What's the video game that the early G.I. Joe Classified was based on? They had these kind of sort of body armor patterns and stuff, didn't they? So yeah, it's got its own vibe. You get, and the core is there, the sort of blue core uniform, but heavily armored up, tactical, big body armor, tactical vest thing, big shin guards. That's the bit that's reminding me of that video game inspiration for the early classifieds. Lots of gear. The helmet shape's kind of sort of Cobra Troopery, but he's got a breathing mask rather than the kind of standard cloth face mask and stuff. So yeah, really interesting. Really bringing their own flavor to it, 100%. Getting in a bit closer, you can see that despite the 1/18 scale, they've really managed to sculpt in some nice finer details in there. I've been very impressed. You know, I said when I took a look at some of the other Hiya Toys Exquisite minis and took a look at some of the Fresh Monkey Fiction stuff in this scale, that I was like, whoa, it's come on a long way. You know, for a guy who's more regularly picking up 6-inch figures, it's pretty mind-blowing. So we can see like the paint applications on the eyes and the eyebrows, lovely detail in there. Lots of little sculpted details, things like the Cobra symbol on the front here is sculpted on and then painted over the top, and you can see the shapes in the body armor, all these kind of extra little panels and pieces of armor and kit and gear. You can see sculpted details right down into the pouches with little clasps and the flaps over the top. Obviously, down here in the shins and things as well, got these lovely sculpted details in the knee pads and down there. Yeah, just really quite impressed for the size and scale of it, how much detail they managed to get in there. I mean, look at his breathing mask. Look at the detail in that. Lovely. And if I pop the helmet off there, you can see kind of more detail on the underside, although you can see that me popping the helmet on and off frequently has kind of left a bit of a paint smear on there. But yeah, there's sculpted detail in there too. And all around the back here, look at this. All sculpted in down the body armor and this little kind of spinal shape pattern thing across the back there. Lovely. Then there's the camo pattern in here, you know, and again, this looks really nice. The blue's perhaps a bit lighter than my personal taste would prefer. I like that sort of deeper Cobra blue across the sort of Cobra uniforms that we've seen in other lines and previous figures and interpretations of it. So it's a bit of a lighter blue than I like, but that doesn't detract away from the quality of the work there. It's that's a personal taste thing. I just think it should be a deeper blue. Yeah, pretty impressive, the sculpting detail. I mean, like, look at these little sort of added energy cell things here on his body armor. Yeah, very, very eye-catching. Really, really blown away by the 1/18th scale stuff. It's in a whole new space, you know. I have to confess, and this may be because of the smaller scale. Oh, I've just knocked me like that. It may be, what was I saying? Yeah, this may be because of the smaller scale, but I find the figure quite crowded and quite busy. You know, lots going on there, crammed in, like all these pieces, extra little pieces of armor just sort of slammed in, out of focus, slammed in all over the place, and like, you know, the elbow and down here on the forearm, and then all the pouches, then the body armor in the middle, then the 2 holsters on either side, and then round the back he's got his dagger, and you know, I find it feels a little bit busy. A little bit too much, a bit hectic sometimes on the eye. And that, you know, your mileage will vary. That depends on what you like. I like perhaps sometimes more of a more minimalist look. And it might not seem quite as overwhelming to the eye in the 6-inch scale, but I definitely look at it and I think, God, what am I even, where to start? You know what I mean? And you've got lots of elements in here to sort of demonstrating the little attention to detail, the little splashes of red here in the shin guards. You can see just in these little gaps here, which is really nice to see. And then the different colours here, you know, they've made a sort of darker, more blacker boot there, but then with the straps of the grey over the top and stuff. So yeah, they've really, you know, and the straps are painted all the way round, not just kind of lazily thrown together, although you can see some, on this top section here, there's a bit of blue breaking through from the underneath where they painted the black over the top, so it's kind of rubbed off. In fact, you can see it really quite significantly on the inside of the leg there. So some of these sections are a bit loosey-goosey. That one's quite bad over the top of the strap there. Can you see the blue poking through? However, you know, ultimately, what I wanted to point out was that, you know, they've not skimped on, you know, they're not just painted that all sheer black and stuff. So as far as the visual experience goes, as far as the aesthetic qualities go, I think I'm going to give it a thumbs up, a tentative thumbs up. Because I'm not fully decided what to make. I've had this for over a week now, and it's been hanging around as a desk figure, and I've been sort of playing around with it and stuff when I've been on Teams calls for work as a kind of desk fidget toy. And sometimes I look at it and I think, yeah, well, you know, what a wonderful, lovely, interesting modern interpretation. I like what they've done there, and the sort of that overall aesthetic language, that kind of visual language of the line is interesting. And then sometimes I look at it and I think, oh, God, that's really busy. You know, it's kind of noisy with content. And so, yeah, I don't know how helpful that is for you. If you're thinking about picking one up, I suppose your mileage will vary depending on where your preferences lie. But nonetheless, you can't disregard that at this scale, those little finer detail elements are actually really quite impressive. So I'm going to give it a tentative thumbs up because I have enjoyed the figure visually, and I do think there's some really impressive aesthetic elements to it there. I think just it's a personal preference thing. It just doesn't necessarily fully appeal to my own tastes, you know? So there you go. There's the aesthetic and the visual experience. Let's now take a closer look at the articulation posability, shall we? I'll pop timestamps in. There's chapters on this video down in the description, folks. So if articulation is of less interest to you, if you're already familiar with the line, and it is fairly standard, there's a couple of quirks, but it's fairly standard, then you can jump ahead and take a look at the rundown of the accessories and the added value stuff. However, if this is your first Hiya Toys Exquisite Minis G.I. Joe figure review you've ever seen, or you're just interested to know about those quirks, then stick around and I'll walk you through it, and I'm going to get started by talking about the head. So up top here then, it is a ball in the base of the skull, which gives you down to about there, gives you up to about there, and then you can swivel, you know, full exorcist and tilt on the edge of the ball. I don't think there's a ball at the base of the neck. I don't believe there is. I think it's that's just molded in there. Then moving down into the arms, you can see we've got the butterfly joint there, giving you shuffle forward and back. And then there's a peg and a hinge in the armpit, so you can go full 360 and get out to a T shape to about there. Got a swivel here at the top of the bicep and tricep. Pinless double elbow that will get you up to there. And the hands here are pegged on. There's a little ball peg on the underside here, so you can. And these are a bit tricky to do. There you go. So you can sort of swivel it and move it around at the wrist. Into the torso, and do you know what? I honestly don't know what articulation there is under there. I suspect there's a barbell joint across the torso that was seen with other figures in the line, and I'm pretty sure there's a ball joint in at the waist. However, the way this armour is and the way it's attached to the belt at the front here super restricts any movement you've got in that middle articulation. There's not a lot of movement there at all. Moving down into the legs, you can see there it's the ball jointed at the hips, so you can move forward like this. You could Russian ballet more if you didn't have the attached holsters to the belt at the middle, but there you go, there's your splits. And then you've got the movement on the end of the ball at the hip, and then a thigh cut in there as well, so loads of movement at the top of the hips there. Got your pinless double knee, that'll get you up to there. And then you've got the hinge and rocker here at the ankle, but the movement in that is very tight and very restricted. Some part due to the design of this this kind of front panel here and the shin restricting how far forward you can go, and then just really tight on the back, just doesn't really go very far. And the rockers are a bit squiffy too. Might be solvable with a bit of extra heat, but for the purposes of the review, I've just kind of left that as is. Now the articulation's okay, it's decent. I'm certainly impressed at the range of articulation you get at this scale. You know, it matches, if not betters, some of the 6-inch figure lines that I collect. However, the specific design on this figure is a little bit restrictive. You know, the body armor stuff that's going on, no boot cut in there. The ankles, the fact that there's not a lot of movement on the ankles. I'm shedding there on the end of my finger. Bit of Chris's hair coming in and making a guest appearance. But the really crunchy and limited movement in the ankles makes some of the poses a wee bit difficult. But for what it is at this size, you can't judge it too harshly, because you know what they've managed to engineer there at this scale is pretty freaking impressive. But I have found some of the things I've tried to do with it a little bit limited. So there you go. One thing in particular, I know I've not moved on to the weapons yet, but I mean, trying to get him doing some kind of shouldered poses with his rifle, shooting it, and I don't know if it's a deficit on my part or it's a challenge with the figure, but I just can't get it done. And I was having a look at some of their promo photos, and I'm not sure they've done it themselves either. They've kind of hidden it in the way they've taken the pickies, but we'll revisit that in a sec. So yeah, I'm kind of edging towards a middle thumb, not full up, but not full down either, because it's really impressive. But I have found that some of the poses that I wanted to do, I've struggled with. So there you go. Okay, so there's articulation. Let's now have a look at the accessories and added value, shall we? And of course, you probably noticed as I've been manhandling the figure through the course of this review, it comes with accessories already, you know, pre-set up configured into the on-figure storage, which is really impressive. So we've got 2 pistols here in the hip holsters that were already in there, and then his knife in his little knife sheath round the back. There's the knife there. You can see a single piece of molded plastic, got a painted blade on it in the metallic color, which I'm always appreciative of. And then you've got the handle here, and then little paint applications, little red paint applications on the inside of the grip section, which is really nice as well, just an extra little touch of detail. Obviously, you've got to be very cautious with that when it comes to dropping it and getting it swallowed by the carpet monster. But yeah, lovely shape, interesting dagger design. And then you've got the 2 handguns here. Again, you can see a single piece of molded plastic, but with some paint applications to bring it to life. So you've got the kind of metallic section across the top, the red trigger, and some sculpted details in there to bring it more to life as well. You can see some more sculpted details down in the handle there too, which is really nice. When I first got it, these were really tricky to get out of the holsters. They were, and it's definitely a tight fit in there, but as I've played around with them and moved them in and out, it's kind of loosened up a bit, but something of note, I suppose. And just to jump off the weapons loadout for a brief second, there's a couple of hand swaps in there for each of the 2 arms, and as you can see, the hand swaps are the trigger finger hand swaps. So the ones that come on the figure are a more kind of grippy hand there, but these ones are like trigger fingers. Well, obviously using the aforementioned pistols and the rifles I'm about to show you. Then we've got this rifle here. A single piece of molded plastic. You can see the sculpted details in again. Got a kind of sci-fi vibe, bit of a kind of colonial marine-esque in a way. Like a bit pulse rifle-y, which I think is really interesting. With this massive gap in there. I don't know if that's you can see the bullet shooting through the barrel or whether it's supposed to be laser beams. And you can see this lovely gunmetal dry brush over the top as well to give it some depth and character. And then we've got this like massive sniper rifle piece as well. Same story again, big, long, single piece of molded plastic with the dry brush over the top in the gunmetal to give it that shiny metal used effect, and the lovely sculpted details in there, including the little sight at the top. Now, you'll probably notice that both of these have got these little peg holes in them. The set does come with a little peg, which are tiny, and I've nearly lost them many times, but you can pop that peg in there onto either of the weapons, and then round back here you can see you've got peg holes in the shoulders, so you can peg his weapons in for ongoing stories like that. It's not a great solution. They kind of fall a bit loose, you see there. Fall a bit loose, they drop off. This one in particular is a bit better with the sniper rifle in general. And there are 2 peg holes and a peg each, so the theory is I suspect that you're supposed to be able to, well, it's fallen out, but you're supposed to be able to have him mounted with both rifles, and I have done that. There you go, but it, again, looks very busy, very crowded, very bulked up. So it's great to have on-figure solution, but I'm not sure the implementation of this is fantastic. The figure also suffers a little bit. I alluded to it earlier. It suffers a little bit from the same problem that some of those earlier G.I. Joe classified figures did, when the bulky body armor across the chest and the design of the weapons means it's very difficult to, just get him in a shooty pose with his weapons. That's with both the rifles. I've got the big old sniper rifle in there. You can also see that the handles seem a bit wide for the hands. So you've got this kind of weird stretch with the trigger finger and stuff. I don't know what that's all about, but yeah, very tricky to get him holding his weapons in a shouldered shooting stance. Then we've got this foot stand for the Cobra Trooper. I don't know if it's a standard design. I haven't grabbed the others to compare, but it's pretty nice with a sort of textured floor scene there with some little bits of metal sticking out in the rubbly kind of style and design. Got a peg here for pegging in on the heel, the peg hole in the heels of the feet. So foot stands of this nature are always useful, always useful. And then you can see you've got these grooves around the side because there's a couple of little brackets that come with it that you can clip in there and use to attach to, the other foot stands, so you can make a little display out of it. So, the accessory selection is pretty solid. I mean, it's not wildly exciting in the sense of, it's a standard, it's a weapons loadout for a trooper. He's a trooper and he carries guns, but that's fine because, that's that's what the character is. That's what the character's all about. And, you know, there isn't any balmy or weird or wonderful or wacky exciting thing here. I think it is a little bit let down that you can't quite fully engage with some of the accessory items the way you might like to. I'm happy to be called out on that and being told that it is possible to do. It's just you, Chris. And I have to also confess that the size, the scale is a bit of a challenge for me sometimes because I find it quite fiddly. And my patience isn't great, and so I get a little bit frustrated. And maybe if I was a little bit more persistent, a little bit more patient, then maybe I could get him into some of the poses that I was trying to do but was unable to do because of some of the articulation limitations and the knock-on effect that has into integrating the accessories in. But in terms of added value, you know, there's loads in there. There's a raft of stuff that you can use with your figure to mix and match it up a bit. And, you know, I suppose I've got to call it out. You'd have to have some added value because these are not cheap, you know, for this scale. They are quite heavy in terms of the price. So, you know, a bit of added value won't go amiss. But yeah, it's a solid accessory selection. I'll give it a thumbs up. Okay, right. Well, there's the accessories. Let's now take a quick look at the Cobra Trooper next to a couple of other Hiya Toys G.I. Joes, shall we? So here we are then. Here's the Cobra Trooper next to Destro from the Exquisite Minis line, the Exquisite Minis G.I. Joe line. I think this has been my favourite, actually. This is the one I've definitely enjoyed the most and have gone back to. He's actually been out on display. He's on the shelf, so that's how much I've been liking this Destro. Here's the Cobra Trooper next to the Firefly figure. And you know what? This Firefly figure is quite busy and crowded up, isn't he? But I reviewed that one much more favourably. And I don't feel like when I look at him, he's all that crowded. So, what's that all about? Why am I leaning towards one more than the other? I'm not sure. There's obviously something contributing to it. Here he is next to Zartan. And just for a bit of a comparison, here he is next to a pared down. As you can see, I've removed a lot of all the gubbins and stuff. A pared down Red Shadow, or whatever the hell Fresh Monkey Fiction call it. Whatever legally distinct but similar name they give them. But here's the Cobra Trooper going around on the turntables. You can get a nice 360 look at the figure, folks. And while you're eyeballing that, I'll offer up some final thoughts. And you probably detected it in my tone through the course of the review. But this one's not clicked with me. The Cobra Trooper's not clicked with me the same way that particularly Firefly and Destro did from that kind of last batch that I reviewed. I can't fully explain why. But for some reason the Cobra Trooper is just not quite singing to me the same way as the others did. And fundamentally, a lot of the kind of core elements are there. You know, I've been wildly impressed with the direction of travel with 1/18 scale stuff, like the articulation. You know, I was ignorant to what was possible, and now I've got a growing 1/18 scale collection. It's a small one, but it's growing. I've got a couple of Joy Toy Turtlesy stuff and a little bit of Fresh Monkey Fiction, and now some Hiya Toy. You know, it's growing. So the fundamentals of being impressed with that and the quality of the sculpting, and obviously they put a lot of time and effort into the attention to detail elements to just really bring it to life and give it a nice three-dimensional character and personality. But it's just not quite clicked with me the same, and I can't fully articulate why, which I know for a review isn't very helpful, but I suppose I'm putting it out there because I think it's important to point out that this could be a personal preference thing, that your mileage may vary. Because overall, certainly by comparison to the others, it's a really good figure. It's a good figure. Moves the same, looks pretty good, loads of accessories thrown in. You know, if you're operating at this scale and you're willing to pay the price that they charge for them, because I do think the 1/18 scale is a bit pricey in general across the 1/18, you know, marketplace. It's not just Hiya Toys. Then you can't really go wrong with this. It's a solid figure, but for some reason it's just not quite fully clicked with me. I don't know if it's because I just sort of saw the lighter blue look of the uniform and kind of poison the waters in my mind or something. I don't know, but there we go. But however, I open the floor and invite you to head to the comments down below and let me know your thoughts or any speculations to what it might be that's affecting my decision making. Any of the regulars around here who've got to know me a little bit, maybe you could tell me and say, it's because of this, Chris. You're always about this. So there we go. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks once again to Hiya Toys for the preview products. Really exciting to have ended up on somebody's preview product list. And so thanks again, although they might not thank me after that review. And thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, then do the subscribe thing. If it's helped you make a purchase decision, then make sure you give the video a like. And please come again soon for another video. I'd love to see you again around these parts. So have yourself a great day, have yourself a great week, and take it easy, folks. Bye-bye now.